All right, well, it is 4:15, so with everybody's permission here, I think I'm going to go ahead and call our library, our Monday, May 18th board meeting of the St. Joseph County Public Library to order. And I'll point out, although we don't have any visitors, but if any visitors are to join us, that we will have a time at the end of the meeting for visitors to address us or to provide written comments through chat. But otherwise, the visitors will probably be muted until that time. So the first order of business is for me to go ahead and call the meeting to order as I did. And next to do a determination of a quorum, and like we did last month during our Zoom meeting, I'm going to just do a roll call for that. And when I do the roll call, if you'll all just indicate, since we normally have the we have a full board packet that's provided to us at our meetings, but our board packets are, of course, we don't have them, we couldn't deliver them to us each individually, so you've all had them sent to you via the internet. So I just wanted you all to confirm when I call your name that you have received the board packet and that you've had an opportunity to review everything in the packet. So with that, let me go ahead and just get started. Anne?
Yes, I'm here and I got the packet and reviewed it.
Thank you. Terry?
Yes, all set.
Christine?
Yes, yes.
Augie?
Here, and I have the packet.
Michelle?
Yes and yes.
Okay, Marvin?
Yes and yes.
And then I also am here, of course, and I did receive the packet and I have reviewed it. The next order of business is the consideration of the board minutes for the meeting that was held by Zoom on April 27th. And again, a copy of those proposed minutes were included in our board packet. So is there a motion to approve the?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Christine and seconded by Marvin. Are there any questions, discussions, or additions or corrections? Hearing none, let's go through the roll to approve. Anne?
Aye.
Terry?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Augie?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
And Marvin?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye as well, so the minutes are approved. Next order of business is our director's report, and Deb has said she'd like to just give it verbally today. So Deb, the floor is yours.
We still keep reinventing. As far as main library goes, we've hit some speed bumps over the last 4 weeks. As you already know, we needed to remediate asbestos found in the flooring of the original main library on all 3 floors. That work has since been completed, as has most of the demo in the building. On the 3rd floor, wall work is starting to happen, so there are some new walls that are going up, while demo is being finished up on the 1st and 2nd floors, and that should just be about done, I believe. The more noticeable part of the project is the installation of the geopiers in the annex location. Wayne Street between Michigan and Maine has needed to be closed for that work. And the installation itself has become somewhat problematic, and maybe I'm just being nice about that, Glenn, I don't know. In part because the team discovered old foundations in several areas on the site. And you know, since there have been structures on that site for over 100 years, that's probably not surprising, but it was unexpected. So the Bully and Andrews team has worked through several potential solutions to set the piers and get the demolition going for the former restaurant building. But we have Glenn Pierce and Antonia Winfrey here this afternoon from Bully and Andrews that are on the team. And I'm asking Glenn or Antonia, either one of you, to do a brief overview of where we stand with the site work and also to touch on some of the budget status. We kind of know this is a fluid number as various bid packages and value engineering are still in process, but we have some sense of where we're landing right now. So take it away, Bully and Andrews.
Okay, so just to kind of give you guys a heads up, Deb kind of hit some of the highlights. The demolition should be wrapped up within the next couple days of all of the areas inside The building, if you wander through on 3, 2, and 1, 3 and 2 are starting to get framing, so starting to lay out and start to look more similar to what you'd see on the plans coming through there. You're starting to see a lot more movement on the site, the east side where Music Village is. You're starting to see the demolition of that building. Actually, as of today, they're starting to tear down that building. Over Thursday and Friday of last week, Deb mentioned we put some earth retention system in, some sheeting that got installed from Wayne Street into the north side of that building. There were some unexpected obstructions, so we took out the sidewalk on that area. When we did, we found footings and foundation that were extending beyond the property line into the right-of-way area. I don't know what that was from before, but during our removal, we took a section out, started to continually dig, and we found more. So in order to avoid that, we dug about 4 feet down and a whole trench the line of that, and it was clear. When they came out to do the sheeting, they ran into some larger boulders, some underground slabs, a lot of different things that were out in the right of way, which was unexpected, but we were able to kind of get past that, take care of it all, and make sure that the sheeting was taken care of and put in. So that's moving forward. What you're going to see in the next probably 2 weeks is actually in the next week, the building, the Music Village should all disappear, including the basement being removed, footings and foundation, and then you're going to get being backfilled. During that process, we've run into some other things. It appears that the Avon Theater had some foundations that were left on the site that run east and west. We've had to dig and take those out as well, so we've removed those. But hopefully that's all getting leveled up in the next week, and then next week we will have geopiers coming in. That rig will be on site for probably about 7 or 8 days. All the aggregate piers for all the footings and foundations, so that we can get moving with the footings and foundations. You're not going to see anything coming out of the ground except for the rig itself kind of putting the materials in. So that's kind of where we stand just as far as construction's going. To touch base a little bit about budget, where we are before we do the award rec.
Yeah.
Okay. So budget right now we're about 31,535,000. What that includes, it's a little bit different from what you're going to see on the recommendation form for the elevators. But there's a lot of things that have happened in the meantime with some of the award recs. So just, I'm going to kind of hit tops of the trees for you guys. Sprinkler as an example. The reason our number is different than what we had shown on the award sheet before is we were able to generate about $50,000 with a change in the sprinkler system going from a clean agent system to a pre-action system. So that helps kind of offset the budget and builds the contingency a little bit more. The glass and glazing with precision wall systems, it was about 1.6 million. It was the award for them. We've been able to come back and work with them to get about $130,000 out of that contract to help kind of go back and fund the contingency. Some of these costs will be utilized for unforeseen, right? Just like we found on the north side with the sheeting. Jim, how are you? And
I'm okay.
another item that we were able to save a little bit on was the elevators. So the new elevators on the northeast corner, by changing some of the size and capacity, but still meeting some of the travel requirements for speed and getting passengers through, we saved about 70 grand doing that. So as we go forward, we're trying to look through and dice things up and make sure that we're being effective with all of the money for St. Joseph County Public Library. A couple things that we're still looking at that they're in the mix right now are pergolas, trying to see if we can fine tune that. Millwork, which we'll talk about a little bit later, came in higher, but we think there's some VE options there. Landscaping, elevator mod, light fixtures, and then earth retention system. So potentially, you know, a couple hundred, $300,000, $400,000, maybe $500,000 with savings potentially.
And then Glenn, I noticed in the bid package for this bid group 6 on that security access, your budget for that, which was in the range of 25,000, it came in over 200,000. Any sense as to what was up with? I mean, that's just such a big disparity between what you all initially were budgeting. Was there something else there, or have you all been able to dice that out yet? Or
Yeah, so a couple things with that. So that security piece of it, the budget was originally holding just conduit and raceway for that work. So we had AV and the other, and we separated them into two different categories with that. So that's one of the reasons why. But I've also reached out to the bidders to confirm that they have actually not picked up the cameras, because we believe there may be a double dip on some of the cameras. The library is currently carrying the cost for the cameras, and subcontractors, no matter how much direction you give them, including GCs, and there's a lot of interpretation to drawings to make sure they're done correctly. So they might have grabbed onto some of the images there and said, we need to provide this as well. So ideally they have that included in their number, and we can get a reduction in that price.
okay. Does anybody else maybe right now have? I mean, when we get to the elevator later on, we can look at that. But anybody else have any? As long as we've got Glenn, here talking about it, have any questions about sort of what's going on, or about the specific bids or any other aspect of the project?
Well, it's a little bit of an aside maybe, but these foundations that you've discovered, is anybody looking into what they were? I think that would be not part of this, but I mean, this discussion, but wouldn't it be good to know? Anybody know how?
We have thought about putting our local and family history staff on it. In some of the cases, I believe there was more than one building on the site. So there might have been a 100-year-old foundation, or there might be a 50-year-old foundation, but it's interesting just to think about what might have been there. My facilities manager is convinced there was a mortuary there because they found bottles, old embalming fluid bottles, in one part of the site. So it's hard to know.
I hope it was.
What? Yeah, it's hard to know what all might have been there. There was an electric company on the Wayne Street side at one point in time before the diocese went in. So we know it's been numerous things over the years. But
Okay, well,
Have
I'm
you
not proposing
contacted-
that we invest, time or money necessarily. Just a curious question. I figured somebody was interested.
Would it be worth contacting Historic Preservation? They might have a
could be.
history.
Yeah.
No.
Ah,
God, no.
No.
You want to get the place red tagged?
That's when I first joined the board. We were in the midst of the theater discussion. It
Yeah.
keeps coming back.
Well, we'll get our local history people on there, because I think they've got some information that we probably could use.
I met some people in Pompeii that are really good at this.
Oh gosh.
If there's nothing else for Glenn, I'll continue with the rest of what I want to talk about with you. But I want to make sure nobody has any other questions. And we'll have Glenn here periodically. I don't know if we'll make you come to every meeting, Glenn, but just so you can kind of update them, and it's better coming from you, I think, than me. Sometimes you can answer the questions I can't.
Yeah, no problem. Just let me know.
Yeah, and you might as well hang on till we get to new business if you can, because when
Right.
we get to the
Right.
might as well, yeah, as long as
Yeah.
you're here, if you could
Yep.
hang on, we'll get there.
Okay.
I do have one more quick one. At some point when it's appropriate and not interfering with anything, would there be any opportunity for us to get in and actually see what's going on and where the money's going?
Absolutely. Yeah, we probably won't open it to the public, but I think
Right.
for board members, we could have maybe a tour that we kind of lead through, because obviously there's obstructions, there's holes, penetrations, different things. But yeah, just make sure I'm sure we could definitely schedule something like that.
Wouldn't want to interrupt anything, obviously, but
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about library services and where we are. 2 weeks ago, we brought limited staff back into the buildings to begin the process of checking in and reshelving items. After we finished what had been returned while we were closed and then we ran reports, we found that 62,000 items were still checked out, all due May 15th, which was just over the week. This past week, those have been flooding in. And as of this morning, we were down to 37,500 items, but that's still a lot of material. I know the book drops were overflowing over the weekend. And questions about returns have been a little overwhelming too, because we're quarantining materials for 3 days. Once we empty a book drop before we touch them again, our patrons aren't seeing their items come off their accounts as they normally would. And so there are lots of questions about, I've returned my books, why are they still checked out to me? So we're moving through all that. Last Monday, May 11th, we began curbside services for patrons at 5 locations. That was Francis Center, Keller Park, North Liberty, and River Park. And for many reasons, this is a very labor-intensive service, and we've used the week to refine our processes. We're getting better as we go, I think. I won't say it's been easy for our employees because I know it's not. They have faced a new flood of return material along with hundreds of holds per location, but they are coping. I think Ron is on the call. There may have been 400 or 600 holds at one of our locations when we opened, so it's been big. This week, we plan to roll out digital services at our other 5 locations. That's Western, LaSalle, Tot, Lakeville, and German. Those services are going to include drive-in laptop loans. So you drive in, you give us identification, we'll loan you a laptop to use with our Wi-Fi. And we're doing document services like scanning, fax, photocopies, and additional help in filing for services like unemployment, SNAP, and TANF. Over the next few weeks, we're hoping to combine both sets of services so that every location is doing curbside book delivery and drive-in tech services, but it's going to take a little bit of doing to get there. We've also wanted to focus on some of our seniors in the community. So homebound services are back up for some patrons, mostly those in independent living situations, patrons who are quarantined in nursing homes. A lot of them are still unable to get materials from us for now. We are donating boxes of books by request to places like Our Lady of the Road, St. Margaret's House, the neonatal ICU, and little free libraries around town. And these are all from our Friends Bookstore. We've recalled a few of our employees from furlough, but we're being really cautious about bringing back too many until we understand what the service needs are going to be. Our circulation folks, cataloging, holds management, and the call center, all those services are up and running, and things are pretty intense right now, but we also know that once we get through the backlog, there's probably going to be some lag time until all of our buildings actually open to the public. We're still providing a full suite of digital services, including programs, community information, and lots of fun activities. And when I looked at the statistics, you know, there's not much to see because we weren't really doing checkouts, but digital checkouts were up by 40% in April. That's 25,000 more items than in 2019, just in digital. Database views skyrocketed in April, over 117,000 uses compared to 43,000 last year, so more than double. And then virtually all of the Wi-Fi you see, and there were over 8,000 uses in Wi-Fi in April. Those are from patrons who are using our Wi-Fi from our parking lots. So people are still getting to us. For future planning, we're discussing how and when we might open our buildings again, but so much is going to depend on how the pandemic process progresses. Since there are predictions for a possible spike later this year, we're taking things pretty slowly. Sometime in June, probably late June or later in June, we plan to begin opening buildings. And like the rest of the population, we'll devise a plan of service that allows us to continue during the pandemic. This is going to be with us for a long time to come. We're in the process of building plexiglass shields for all the service desks. We really, at this point, don't foresee any in-person summer programming because those are all dependent on crowds of kids, and we've canceled meeting room bookings through the summer. I think our biggest challenge is going to be figuring out how to maintain proper distancing in our buildings, which are full of furniture because we're used as community centers. So we're thinking through time limits for computers, where to store furnishings. Poor Bruce Burnett, who has to store, he's already storing a lot of main library furnishings. Now he's got to find a place for the branch furnishings too. How we're going to determine safe capacities in our buildings and a host of other challenging service challenges. We do know that some of our service models are going to be changing for the long haul. We found we have employees who can do their work entirely from home, and that is probably going to continue for the foreseeable future. I think curbside delivery is just going to become a regular part of what we do, and we'll need to make it more seamless for everybody. We're starting to look at scheduling software for curbside, but we've got a ways to go for that. There are a few companies who developed it. We're going to be looking at what they're doing. And I've asked my staff to investigate as many touchless services as possible. So for instance, if patrons can check out materials using their phones, it eliminates the risk of touching a self-check machine or of handling materials from a staff member. So it's just going to be another option for patrons to interact with us, but we'll still keep it easy, but more touchless than we had before. So that's the update. If you have questions about anything, please feel free to ask.
So yeah, so Deb, before we go on to that, yeah, so does anybody have any questions at all about Marvin, go ahead.
I have one. Deb, just for my information, how are the libraries in the minority communities faring during this pandemic? Do you see a lot of use from this?
We're seeing a lot of Wi-Fi use, so people are coming either walking up or in their cars, and they're using the Wi-Fi. And those branches, we're not doing a lot of physical checkouts compared to other branches before, so that's why we're rolling out document services. We do a lot of faxing. We do a lot of photocopying at those West Side branches. And we're really hoping that this will help people get this sort of have access to the services they need, because a lot of times you need to scan a birth certificate or scan a driver's license to fill out a form. So we're going to focus our first charge at those West Side locations on those kinds of services and then ramp up with the curbside. I think it's been hard for everybody. I get copied on all of the email contacts that patrons do, and you can kind of see as everything has rolled forward how the tenor is changing. At first it was, how do I get access? So we were making digital cards like crazy. Now it's, how do I get holds done? How do I pick up a hold? How do I get why aren't my books getting checked in? So the questions are changing, but they're still there. I don't know if that answers it, Marvin, but
It does.
okay.
It does. And the other question I have, and maybe you don't have an answer for this yet, is summertime. What kind of ideas do we have for summer activities, providing there is a summer, I guess?
We're doing, and maybe Jenny will want to take this in a minute, but we're doing a lot online. So our summer reading program is going to be online.
Okay.
I don't know whether you've tuned into our Facebook site, but we have some fabulous staff members who are doing story times, and we have one of our youth engagement people who is telling stories and drawing at the same time, and he's really good. And then we do some evening, usually I think Joe does Saturday nights, I think, and he usually has a beer in his hand when he's doing those book discussions. So it's going to be digital. There are a lot of companies that we work with or that are out there that do programming, like magicians and local groups and other places that we would bring in maybe for programs that are doing digital programs. So we're looking at contracting with some of those too. But we've got a whole slate of programs ready to go for summer. It's just going to be mostly digital and not in person. Again, it's the gathering, it's the distancing that we're concerned about.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're
Thank you.
also working. One of the exciting things is having like grab and go kits, and that will be for summer reading kickoff. But there's also a few other things so that if you're picking up, if you're doing curbside tech, getting a laptop or getting a book, you can pick up some activities for your kids to do in tandem with these events. So that's what we've been finding, is that people are really enjoying the virtual interaction that we can provide with like Miss Sandy and some of our storytime people, but starting to build in maybe a more tangible element to the whole thing. But this will all roll out. You'll probably be hearing about it in your email next week. So we'll be having a whole slew of programming in June.
Okay. Thank you.
So Jennifer, following up with Marvin's question, when it comes to particularly in the minority communities, when we're talking about scanning and fax services, which they may not have the technologies immediately available, how are we getting the message out? Are we trying to like notify pastors and different people that they should let their congregants know, or how are we actually trying to push? I mean, because they may not also be looking at our Facebook pages thinking that how I can go get that. Is there a way we can, or should we be doing more to push that out?
Up to this point, we've done some radio advertising like WUBS and Radio Sabor. So those are ways to reach a few very targeted groups. But we're also working with a group that is providing materials for food pantry boxes. And so some of our items will be part of that. And then I think things like reaching out to partners. So we have a few informational pieces that we send out to different groups that we work with. And that could be neighborhood centers or churches or things like that, so that they can get the information out to their audiences. So we're taking a pretty varied approach right now, because we know Facebook doesn't reach everyone, but it's something that has to change continually, and we can't really rest on our laurels anywhere, because we know there's always somebody who isn't, getting the information that they need. So if anyone has ideas, I'm all ears.
Jenny, do you want to just touch on, and I know you don't have the numbers at your fingertips, we were going to maybe talk about this at the next meeting, but touch on the response that we are seeing on social media, because it's been really robust. And I agree with you that not everybody sees Facebook, but we're getting it. It's impressive, I think. Yeah, we saw, there was an initial leap when all of this rolled out, but we've seen a pretty sustained growth in the number of people that we're reaching and who are engaging with us. And one thing that I'm pretty excited about is that more people are sharing our content. So we've seen places like Ready to Grow St. Joe, BPA, a lot of different organizations are sharing our content. So that exponentially grows the number of people who we are able to contact to. And we've taken a very proactive approach to share a lot of community content so that we can be a source of information for everyone and hopefully bring people together. But yeah, I can pull together all of those numbers, but I think off the top of my head, during that first month period, we had more growth in our Facebook page than we had year to date. So it was a pretty dramatic increase. And the same goes for our email, which that reaches all of our patrons plus another 15,000 people. And we send out 2 emails a week, and we haven't seen a decrease in the number of people who are opening those or clicking on those. And that also grew from what we were seeing prior. So I think we've been able to capitalize on the ways that we communicate digitally fairly well. There are 2 other avenues I just wanted to mention as Jenny was talking. And one is the Community Foundation, they've asked for our information on services that we're providing, because they'll send it out to all their nonprofit partners. So as Jenny was saying, it just widens the network, because all of these nonprofits are going to understand what we're doing, and they have clientele that can make use of it. And then Jenny, we're both supposed to sit on it, but I have a conflicting meeting. So Jenny is on the communications group for the group that Jeff Ray is leading for the whole community. So she meets with them once a week too. So we can kind of get an idea of what's being rolled out and share information. So those have been both helpful.
I noticed in the Tribune, maybe in the last week and a half, I think it was Mishawaka had a fairly large spread describing their services. I don't know how effective the Tribune is anymore as far as reaching people, but they were doing something with that.
So I think I saw a paid ad on Sundays. Or what appeared to be a paid ad on Sundays.
That's probably what I saw, I do recall.
Deb, have you been in touch with Daryl Heller at all at the Civil Rights Heritage Center?
We have not, except that he's on the foundation's list, I think. So, but yeah, we can reach out.
Yeah, I'm working with him on some projects, and he has connections that might be helpful to get the word out as well. Even though the school is closed, you can still reach him by email.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Deb, I'm wondering, do you know how much the early childhood programs that are open are accessing, like the story time and things like that?
Hard to know. I don't know that we can tell who's accessing necessarily, but we know they're being accessed pretty frequently. And one of the things that I never would have guessed is that I think this is probably more family than nonprofit, but a lot of people will catch up on weekends, Jenny says. And so you'll see people going back and looking at all the story times we did for the week, or they're looking at all of the programming that we did for the week, and they're just sort of doing a catch up. And so
Wow.
the content stays live longer than it might normally. Normally it's there for the day and it's gone, but people are going back and looking for it.
So that might be a model that we look at after this is over, because that spreads the number of people who can.
Yeah, we don't intend to ramp our digital services down. I think as libraries do, we just pivot to new models, and we're constantly looking for new ways to serve. And so this has been really rewarding, I think, to have done, is to be able to do as much as we're doing.
Great.
Thank you, Jenny. And her team. There are many teams working on this, I should say. It takes a lot to get that content out there.
Yeah. It's been a whole library effort, to be honest. I think every single person has contributed one way or another.
So Deb, we don't want to get into your all's way, but I'm curious, kind of following up on Terry's question about Main Library. But if any board members would want to, of course, practicing social distancing and wearing masks, but if any of us would like to make an appointment to come by one of the branches to observe some of the services, curbside and or digital, and seeing how things are done, is that something that we can just reach out to you and to ask you about and set up?
And I can forward it. It's probably Rana, who's in my screen, is down in the corner. Rana is our branch manager. There she is. I'll send you all her email, and if you're interested in doing something,
that would be great.
Yeah, what branch are you at Keller, or are you at one of the?
Well, I'm the sort of the coordinator of all the branches, so I could set you up at any of them.
She's got all the schedules, all the
got all the connections.
Yeah.
Right.
If anybody saw me jump a second ago, a kamikaze bird just slammed into the window beside me here.
Very cool. All right, Deb, did you have any more for your report? Okay, does anybody have any questions for Deb? Any other questions to Deb or Glenn right now? And if not, is there a motion to approve the director's report?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Just a roll call to approve. Anne?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Augie?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Deb, your report is approved. The next item is the library build list for today, May 18th. And I think in Nancy's absence, Deb, were you going to report on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. You're seeing payments on this bill list for several consulting services. There's Americo for air quality testing related to the asbestos. There's Coalescive, which is the signage consultant, and Interstate, which is also asbestos. And then I wanted to mention our payroll, which has gradually been decreasing as some of our furloughed employees, they've used vacation time before they went on furlough, so the payroll stayed higher than it normally would have with all those furloughs. But as a baseline, the payroll for March 4th was $206,000. April 1st, when the furloughs really started to hit, it was $201,000. And on the most recent payroll we had, which was just last Friday, it was $168,000. So that's how much it's dropped. And that's direct salaries. So there are also costs associated with FICA and with, let me think what else. PERF, sorry, the retirement program too, that we would be seeing some savings in there as well.
Deb, are we seeing any significant shift in our medical or our healthcare between the virus and people being home and all that?
No, Kara's shaking her head, and I would agree. I don't think we've seen anything. We have one person who's out on a COVID-related leave, but that's because of a childcare situation. So no cases that have been reported among the staff. We have a process in place for screening people when they come into work in the mornings. But no, we're not seeing anything at this point, Terry. It could change.
That $40,000 approximate savings there, is that every 2 weeks?
That's every 2 weeks, yeah.
It's about 20,000 a week. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then,
Deb, are there any, or Kara, any cases of folks who are in some extreme or to them extreme financial hardship as a result of furloughs or anything?
I can report to you anecdotally. I talked to the people who'd been recalled to tech services last week, and I stopped in to talk to them, and I said, well, how are you? And they said, wow, those paychecks were nice. We're glad to be back, but wow, that money was really nice, because they're getting the COVID $600, the CARES Act, $600 a week plus their unemployment. So before we did the furloughs, Augie, we calculated whether people would all be eligible. And I think, except for maybe one or two, they were all eligible for the CARES Act distribution. So it's been good. It's been okay.
Yeah, and I want to commend you and the staff on the care and concern and such that you've shown with the staff and in your decision making. I think it's been fantastic.
Thanks.
I'll second that.
so if there's no other questions, is there a motion to approve all of the accounts payable vouchers that are described on the register of accounts payable vouchers, which was included in our board packet?
Second.
Oh, is there a motion? Let's see.
Oh, I thought I heard, I'll move.
Augie made the motion, I think, didn't he?
Okay.
I think he did, and I'll second.
Very good. All right, great. Any additional discussion or questions? If not, I'll call the roll. Ann?
Aye.
Terry?
Yes. Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Augie?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the library bill list is approved.
Just an aside, if I could interject, my mother, who passed away in September, just got her, what are they calling it? Not incentive.
Oh,
Yeah,
stimulus?
$1,200, yes. And what astounds me is that it says deceased right on the check. Who knows?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
bizarre.
Bizarre.
Well, thanks.
Inexpensive.
So the next order of business is to consider the personnel changes that were identified in our board packet. And today, you'll recall, we're being asked to approve a promotion for a human resources assistant, which is a position that was offered and accepted before the current pandemic and is, we're told, is still necessary. And in addition to that, we've got one confidential family medical leave request. So is there a motion to remove the promotion as well as the FMLA request?
Alan, could I just make a really brief comment? The promotion you're seeing, you may remember Francis Walters retired last November, and we redefined that position before COVID-19 began. But what I want to say is that the person listed here is one of our 2019 interns who majored in accounting and found out that she loved libraries. So we're really happy that she's coming on board, and we did have this in process before it all hit.
Okay, great. Okay, so is there a motion to approve of Anna's promotion and also of the FMLA request?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? If not, let's call the roll. Ann? Ann? You're muted, man, yeah. Okay.
Aye.
Okay, Terry?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Augie?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The next item on our agenda is where we would have reports of special library committees, and I'll just note for purposes of the minutes that there were no special board committee meetings held since our last meeting, and so there's no reports. Similarly, to my knowledge, there's no unfinished business, but before I go on, is there any unfinished business that we're forgetting that anybody wants to bring up? If not, we'll move to new business. And the first item of new business is a recommendation of bid awards for the main library renovation. And you'll recall that on May 8th, sealed bids were publicly opened for bid group 6 trades. And there were 6 separate bid groups in that category. And Glenn and Bully and Andrews has a recommendation for us this afternoon for one of these bid groups. And we've been informed that the other 5 bid groups are still under review, and recommendations will be made for the other 5 bid groups later on. So this afternoon, we're being based on Bully and Andrews' review. They are recommending the approval of bid group C, which is the elevator renovation and modification, and they're recommending that we award that bid to Schindler Elevator Corporation. So first, let me ask if there's a motion and a second to that, and after that, Glenn, if you all want to make any comments regarding that or any of the others, you can. So is there a motion to award bid group 6C to Schindler Elevator Corporation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ann and seconded by Terry. So then, Glenn, before we have just general discussion, is there anything that you all want to tell us about that, or anything else with respect to the other 5 big groups?
Yeah, let me just kind of give you kind of a synopsis, because a couple of these were rebid. So I just want to kind of give you in kind of where that started. So 6A millwork, if you remember before, we were substantially higher on the millwork. I think we're about 1.7. With this one, we are probably, I'd say, about $50,000 less than we were before. So there's some value that we got from going out to rebid. In the process of doing so, just so everyone's aware of what's going to happen, is it'll be a little bit before we award this. And the reason being is we broke this bid down into several groups. When I say several groups, we tried to hit different areas of each of the annex building and the main library building and identify labor and material costs. So now we can actually do this more surgically, go through these areas and find out where we can potentially VE this. We have a target goal, and I think we're going to try to shave 200 to 250 off of this number through VE, not changing any of the overall design or aesthetic ideally, just trying to be effective again with people's money on that. The second bid package that went out for rebid was landscaping. This one actually, we were able to do similar. We sat down as a team with Arcos, library ourselves, and looked through some of the finishes, identified some potential areas of savings. This bid last time was probably close to $850,000. So the rebid of this and some of the selections that the library has made through this, there's about a $200,000 savings, which is great. Schindler, we talked about that. The nice thing for the library is it is the same vendor who would be servicing all the elevators, which is great. And before on the annex building, they helped us out to generate some savings. There may be some savings here that we can generate as well by looking at a couple of the systems and things. So we're hoping to maybe squeeze 50,000 or more out of this, which would be great. Last two, again, we talked about security. The security is a little bit different. Still trying to review that, so I don't have too much to say on that. Same thing with audio visual and asphalt, just to make sure they have, are they carrying what they need to do? And then we can hopefully resolve that and get that back to everyone.
Any additional discussion? Terry, did you have something? Okay. Anybody else? If not, if we're ready to vote on approving the award to Schindler, Ann?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Augie?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So was awarded. The next order of business is a resolution setting forth a formal procedure regarding change orders for the main library project. And again, I think I mentioned our council, Jim, prepared both a letter setting forth statutorily the different requirements for change orders and the limitations for change orders, which was helpful. And then he also crafted a suggested resolution. And I did send that around to everybody before this meeting. So hopefully you received that before the meeting. So let me first, before I ask somebody to make the motion, let me just ask Jim, do you, anything you want to specifically describe or talk about?
That's not me calling Marvin. It's the statute that governs the public bidding allows for change orders. The change orders can be no more than 20% of the contract price. In past projects, change orders come up in the middle of the week. They come up at times where you don't expect them. And so it's been the procedure that the library director would approve change orders and then inform the board, and the board would approve them later on at the meeting. The statute here allows change orders not to exceed 20%. My recommendation is you let the executive director approve change orders up to that amount, and then present them to you for you to ratify and approve. Augie had suggested some criteria for approving change orders, which was, which would have been really good if you didn't have a statute that already says what it is. In some circumstances, there is no guideline, and so having a guideline like the one that Augie suggested would have been helpful. The only other thing is, the reason I mentioned or motioned before to have Glenn hang around, the one change order that came up at the same time this policy came up is the change order for the excavation work, and you can't really use that one as a guide because the specifications for the excavation work built in the idea that there would be change orders based on unforeseen circumstances, obstructions that aren't visible, things that are underground that nobody had any knowledge of. And so there are change orders that are more than 20% of the price. But we knew that because those specifications were different than the specifications for almost every other contract, because the bidders, all of the bidders, Glenn, all of the bidders for excavation work insisted on being allowed to change the contract price if they ran into buried problems that they didn't know anything about.
That is correct. Yeah, and the sheeting work that we did is a great example of why those companies have that type of rider in there. When they were putting the sheeting in, they ran into a boulder that was 4 foot in diameter. They ran into a slab of concrete that was abandoned that was 2 foot by 6 foot. So do it to cover their costs and make sure that they're not being exposed to risks that you, us, and them could not foreseeably understand or know.
And that's permitted by statute too, because the statute allows for a change order exceeding 20% for unforeseen circumstances, and that's what happened with the underground excavation. But otherwise, the limit would be 20% total of the contract price. So I think this policy, I think, just follows along with what's been done in the past in allowing the executive director to make the change orders and then tell you about them for your approval at a board meeting.
Okay. So then again, just to reiterate, if the second to last paragraph of the resolution acknowledges again the need to approve change order arises often between board meetings. And so what we're doing today is we're going to, if we approve this resolution, we're going to expressly authorize the executive director to approve change orders in accordance with the public bidding statute and within the guidelines that total change orders for any contract cannot exceed 20% of the original contract price. And with the caveat that the executive director will inform us of the change orders that she's approved, and we will ratify and confirm change orders at a subsequent board meeting. So is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, motion made by Michelle, seconded by Ann. Any further discussion? If not, Ann,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Augie, Augie, you're muted.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Michelle,
Aye.
Marvin,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So that's done. And the final thing we have before us in new business, to my knowledge, is we're being asked this afternoon to consider and to approve the adoption of an amended COVID-19 emergency family and medical leave paid sick leave policy. You'll recall that this would amend the policy that we approved during our Zoom meeting last month. And this proposed revised policy is included in our packet. So first, maybe, well, actually, Deb or Sarah or somebody, one of y'all want to explain what's up here?
This is I'm going to kick it to Kara in just a minute. This is a little more in keeping with the federal guidelines. When we passed the first iteration of the policy, it was very early in the pandemic, and by federal law, we had to have something in place.
Right.
So not really knowing how this was going to go at the time, people were saying, oh, 2 or 3 weeks, we'll flatten the curve, everybody will be back. We opted to be a little more generous than some of the federal guidelines were. This policy still is a little more generous in that we're paying 75% if they're taking a CARES leave rather than 66, but it sort of takes out some of the language that the first one did. In other words, the first one sort of allowed a COVID leave for anybody over 60 and you without an underlying health condition. This kind of puts all of that back. Kara, did I get that right? You want to add to that?
The only other additional change that we made was initially we provided sicker coverage for people who had chosen to pull their kids out of daycare as a choice versus the facility being closed. And we've changed that back to the federal guideline that is just if the school is closed. But other than that, Deb got everything.
All right.
I just saw a news thing pop up that Notre Dame plans to reopen in August.
Oh. So get your football tickets.
Yeah.
So
We haven't decided football yet, so.
That's the driver.
And we're also opening early and no fall break, and the semester will end before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting.
We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do.
So is there a motion then to amend the COVID-19 emergency family and medical leave?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Augie, seconded by Terry. Are there any questions or discussion regarding this proposed amendment? If not, I'll put it to a vote. Ann?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Augie?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The amended policy is approved. Is there any other business to come before our meeting today?
I'd like to say a couple of things. I think Rachel probably, but others, I don't want to skip them. excuse me, I think I've done an extraordinary job of getting this information out in a good workable form and then tying it into the Zoom activity here. I'm able to bring up these documents in another window right there. I don't know who else was involved. I know Rachel was, and good job. I've seen some really messed up Zoom meetings lately. These are good.
She's doing a great job.
Here, here. Any other other business people want to bring up? Okay, if not, now would also be the time for hearing of visitors, where members of the public would be invited to address the board, but I don't believe, unless Glenn or and Antony would like, or Antone would like to address us with anything. If not, we can pass over that. And news and education items, anything Jennifer or Deb or anybody else to report?
I just want to mention, and this is really in board scheduling, but I'll put it in news, that we'll be setting a special meeting. I'm not exactly sure when, but when Bully and Andrews has had time to review the rest of bid group 6 for an award, we'll probably set a special meeting for you all to do that. And at the same time, we're getting ready to roll out the Bendable platform. And it's been a while since you've heard anything about that. And it's a really impressive product, and Jenny can do a demo for that too. So what do you think, Glenn, in 2 weeks maybe from now? You'll be ready? Or
that would be our hope. Yeah, the sooner the better. Yeah.
So maybe on that regard, let me just, so with respect to that, so our next scheduled board meeting is June 22nd. By the way, if things are opened up at that point, or partially opened up, to the extent that we can, I'm just asking, would you all prefer to continue right now, if we're allowed by the governor's orders to continue doing these Zoom meetings? Would you prefer to do these as Zoom meetings? Or, I mean, theoretically, we could come back. You'll recall the meeting we had at Keller Park, we did in that atrium area, and my guess is we could somehow do a socially distant meeting there. If you all would like to meet in person, we could, do tables and, each of us sit at a table or something and rearrange people around the room, however we wanted to do that. But would you prefer to do that, or would you prefer to continue doing Zoom if the governor permits it?
Would we be requiring masks and have
I would think we would do
available or something?
I would think if we met, my preference would be if we meet in person, that unless things change drastically, it would be with masks. We would have staff to wear, anybody attending would wear staff or would wear a mask, and all of us would wear masks as well.
Okay, in that case, I would be willing to attend in person, but either way works.
I would prefer continuing the Zoom meetings until we have more information about safety in general. Some of us are in those at-risk categories. So for now, I would prefer the Zoom meetings.
I'm with Christine.
I'm with Christine.
Too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, all right, so then let's, to the extent that we're able to do it, we'll plan on continuing to meet remotely. And if we get to a situation, you'll recall when they first started this, it was kind of this weird hybrid deal where we could count votes for people participating by Zoom, so long as there was at least, one board member present at the meeting or something. And I mean, if that happens, I don't mind going in with a mask and being the guinea pig to do that if we need to do that. But yeah, so all right, but it's good to know we have the sense of the board that we prefer to do it via Zoom if that's permitted. And Deb, from your perspective too, I know that the library, we've got our library group that's sort of letting them know kind of how library boards are feeling and everything about these things. So I think they probably listen to that a little bit. So if you want to pass that on to whomever.
Sure. The governor's order, I think, on meetings via Zoom or via teleconferencing right now, I think goes through June 4th, but we'll, I would guess that he'll extend it. And, since we're all Zooming fools anyway anymore, that we can do this.
Jim, go ahead. You had something?
Alan, I just remember that the governor's order allows remote meetings to do only what is absolutely necessary.
Right.
So in other words, you could not enact any new policies or go beyond approving what is actually necessary to continue the library services. So you still have that limitation if you're meeting remotely.
Mhm.
Good point. And so Deb, from that point of view too, we'll let you, if you determine that there's something we want to do that goes beyond that, we can talk about it. I'll also mention too, by the way, just our September board meeting, I want to just remind you all that that meeting is going to be held on September 21st instead of the 28th. I think there might have been one or two places where that's appeared as being a September 28th meeting, but we did make that September 21st. So it is correct on the agenda that's in our board packets. And then if there's nothing else, if there's nothing else in news and education or anything else, if there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, then let's just do a roll. I guess we need to do a roll call for that as well. So Ann
Aye.
and Terry,
Aye.
Ian,
Aye.
Augie,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Marvin,
Aye.
and I vote aye. And so now we've done the agenda. We've done the roll calls alphabetical and reverse alphabetical. I have to come up with a different process next month. Anyway.
I'll be first next time.
Okay, Marvin can be first. All right, Marvin.
I think I need to recognize Michelle's background too. We all need to get more creative here.
Here. That's right. Okay, very good. I will
Thank you.
everybody. And we'll, if you all want to stay on and visit, that's fine. If not, see you next month.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.